The alien battlecruiser materialized 300 meters above downtown Chicago at 14:47 Central Time on a Tuesday, and Captain Sarah Chen had exactly 8 seconds to decide whether humanity would survive the next 10 minutes. "Ma'am, their weapons are hot," Lieutenant Morrison's voice cracked across the command center. "Energy signatures spiking across all. I see them." Chen's fingers flew across the holographic display, pulling up every scrap of data the orbital sensors could feed her. The ship was massive, easily 2 kilometers of biomechanical architecture that looked like someone had grown a cathedral out of obsidian and rage. "Get me the Secretary of Defense. Get me anyone with authorization to..." The alien vessel fired. Not at the ground. At the sky. A lance of coherent plasma punched through the atmosphere and vaporized weather satellite Delta 7 in geosynchronous orbit. The message was clear. We can reach you anywhere. Chen's tactical board lit up like a Christmas tree. Every military installation from NORAD to the newest Space Force outpost was screaming for orders, for context, for something that made sense. But Sarah Chen had spent 23 years in the United States Space Force, and she'd learned one crucial lesson. Sometimes the textbook gets you killed. "Morrison, open a channel. All frequencies. I don't care if we're broadcasting on AM radio and Bluetooth. I want them to hear us." "Captain, first contact protocols require executive authorization before..." "Lieutenant, that ship just demonstrated it can glass our entire orbital network whenever it wants. We don't have time for protocols." She leaned into the microphone. "Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United States Space Force. You have entered sovereign airspace without permission and destroyed federal property. State your intentions or prepare to be engaged." It was a bluff, a massive civilization-ending bluff. The 3 railgun satellites they had in range might scratch that ship's paint if they got lucky. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. 6, 9. Then a voice like grinding tectonic plates filled every speaker in the command center. "Humanity, you are in violation of compact law. Your expansion into contested space sector 779 constitutes an act of war against the Vor Collective. You have 1 solar rotation to surrender your species to judgment, or we will sterilize this world and claim it for the Collective." The channel went dead. The conference room in the Pentagon's Subterranean Crisis Center felt like a tomb. President Elizabeth Okonkwo sat at the head of the table, her face carved from stone, while the Joint Chiefs, the National Security Advisor, and every relevant cabinet member stared at the tactical display showing the Vor ship hanging over Chicago like a sword of Damocles. "Options," the president said flatly. General Marcus Webb, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, cleared his throat. "Madam President, we've run every simulation. Nuclear strike, kinetic bombardment, coordinated railgun assault from our orbital platforms. Nothing we have can penetrate that ship's shielding before it obliterates the launch sites, and that's assuming it's alone." "It's not alone," Captain Chen said from her position at the far end of the table. She'd been pulled from Colorado straight into this meeting, still wearing her duty uniform. "Deep space telemetry is picking up at least 15 more signatures at the edge of the solar system. They're waiting to see what we do." Secretary of State Harold Kim leaned forward. "What about this contested space they mentioned? What did we do?" Chen pulled up a star chart. 3 months ago, the Magellan, our first deep space exploration vessel, entered a region about 40 light-years from Earth. We found something, a derelict structure, ancient technology. The science team was analyzing it when we lost contact." "Lost contact?" The president's eyes narrowed. They went dark. "We assumed equipment failure. Now," Chen highlighted the sector, "now I'm guessing the Vor thought we were claiming it." "Were we?" Kim asked. "We planted a flag and took samples," Chen admitted. "Standard exploration protocol. We had no idea anyone else was out there, let alone that they had claims on..." "Captain," the president's voice cut through the room like a blade. "I don't care about who claimed what first. I care about keeping 7 billion people alive. Can we negotiate? Chen hesitated. Madam President, the Vor gave us 24 hours. That's not a negotiation window. That's an execution notice. While the world's leaders argued policy and protocol, Lieutenant Commander James Kowalski was doing what he did best, ignoring the rules and building something impossible. The workshop at Vandenberg Space Force Base looked like a tornado had hit a Radio Shack. Holographic blueprints floated in the air, annotated with hand-scrawled modifications that made the base's AI systems throw error warnings every 3 seconds. Kowalski, a wiry man with permanent grease stains and the kind of manic energy that made HR nervous, was elbow-deep in the guts of a prototype weapon system that officially didn't exist. "You're out of your mind," Dr. Patricia Okonjo said, watching him work. The theoretical physicist had been pulled from her lab at MIT 6 hours ago and still hadn't been told why. "What you're describing violates about 15 laws of physics." 16, Kowalski corrected, not looking up. "But who's counting? Hand me that plasma coil." She passed him the component. "Even if you could generate a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge, weaponizing it would require more energy than our entire planetary grid produces in a year. Which is why we're not using the grid." Kowalski grinned, that particular expression that meant he'd figured out something brilliant and probably illegal. "We're using them." He pulled up a scan of the Vor ship. "See this? Their reactor signature is off the charts. I'm talking 0-point energy harvesting on a scale we can't even dream of. They're sitting on top of Chicago, radiating enough power to run every city on Earth for a decade." So we borrow some." Okonjo stared at him. "You want to tap into an alien warship's power supply, redirect it through an experimental quantum tunnel system, and what? Shoot them with their own reactor?" "More or less." Kowalski's fingers flew across the haptic controls, running calculations. "The math works. Barely. We'd need to get within 100 meters to establish the tap, and we'd have maybe 3 seconds before their systems detected the drain and compensated." 3 seconds to do what? To punch a hole in reality and shove their entire ship through it into a decaying orbit around a black hole I found about 6,000 light-years from here. Okonjo sat down heavily. "That's the most insane thing I've ever heard." "Yeah." Kowalski finally looked at her, and his expression was dead serious. "But do you have a better idea?" The briefing room at Nellis Air Force Base held 12 people and enough nervous energy to power Las Vegas. These were the best pilots humanity had, test pilots who flew experimental craft through flight envelopes that would kill anyone else, astronauts who'd logged more hours in vacuum than atmosphere, and one former NASA engineer who'd designed half the propulsion systems in active service. Captain Chen stood at the front of the room, and she didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You've all been read in on the situation. The Vor ship over Chicago represents an existential threat to human civilization. We have 16 hours until their deadline expires. Command has authorized Operation Longshot, a one-shot attempt to neutralize the threat using an experimental weapons platform." She pulled up a schematic of what looked like a fighter craft had a baby with a particle accelerator. "This is the X-47 Valkyrie. It's fast, it's maneuverable, and it's never been successfully flown by anyone because the G-forces required to operate it at combat speed would liquefy a human body." She paused. "The AI autopilot system has a 78% chance of catastrophic failure under combat conditions, so we need a human pilot." Major David Razor Hawkins, a test pilot with more confirmed crashes than anyone else in the room, raised his hand. "Captain, you just said it would liquefy a human body." "I did." "And you want volunteers?" "I do." Every hand in the room went up. Chen felt something catch in her throat. This was humanity in a nutshell. Faced with impossible odds and certain death, they stepped up anyway. "The mission profile is simple," she continued. You'll launch from a high-altitude platform, approach the Vor ship at maximum velocity, penetrate their defensive perimeter, and establish a quantum tap to their reactor core. Lieutenant Commander Kowalski's device will do the rest. Theoretically, you'll have 3 seconds to complete the tap and disengage before the ship realizes what's happening. "And if we're still attached when it realizes?" asked Commander Lisa Park, an astronaut who'd spent 18 months on the Mars colony. "Then you get a free trip to a black hole." Park nodded slowly. "How do we survive the G-forces?" Chen glanced at Dr. Rajesh Patel, the medical officer who'd been working non-stop since this crisis began. He stepped forward, looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. "We've developed a gel suspension system. You'll be submerged in an oxygenated fluid that will distribute the G-forces more evenly across your body. It's based on research from high-speed crash studies and deep-sea diving medicine." He paused. "You'll be conscious, but you won't be able to breathe normally. The gel handles oxygen exchange directly through your lungs. Test subjects reported it feeling like drowning for the first 30 seconds. Then your brain adjusts, and it only feels like you're suffocating." Someone laughed, the kind of dark humor that military people develop when facing death. "I'll do it," Hawkins said immediately. "I've got the most flight hours in unconventional platforms, and I'm already rated on the X-47 simulator." "You crashed 7 times in the simulator," Chen pointed out. "But I learned something each time." Kowalski's hands were shaking. He stared at the Valkyrie sitting in the hangar, this beautiful, terrible thing he'd helped create, and he couldn't stop thinking about the margins. The error bars. The assumptions built on assumptions that could collapse like a house of cards if he'd gotten even one calculation wrong. "Second-guessing yourself?" Dr. Okonjo appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "I'm third and fourth guessing myself," Kowalski admitted. "Pat, I've got maybe 60% confidence this works. Maybe. And if it doesn't, Hawkins dies, Chicago gets glassed, and humanity probably ends before dinner." "So why'd you design it?" "Because 60% is better than 0. Okonjo handed him the coffee. He drank it anyway. "You know what the difference is between a good engineer and a great one?" she asked. "What?" "A good engineer builds things that work under perfect conditions. A great engineer builds things that work when everything goes wrong." She gestured at the Valkyrie. "You built in 17 backup systems, 5 redundant power routing options, and an AI assistant that can complete the mission even if the pilot is unconscious. You accounted for variables that don't even have names yet." "It's not enough. It never is." She smiled sadly. "But it's what we have. And sometimes, Jim, what we have has to be enough." The Vor broadcast began at T-6 hours. Every screen on Earth lit up simultaneously with the image of the alien commander, a thing that looked like someone had made a humanoid out of volcanic glass and malevolent intent. Its voice resonated in frequencies that made human teeth ache. "Humanity, your time approaches its end. We have monitored your preparations, your primitive weapons, your desperate schemes. We have found them amusing." In the command center, President Okonkwo clenched her fists. "Know this. The Vor Collective has sterilized 47 worlds. Yours will be 48. We do this not from cruelty, but from necessity. The compact must be maintained. Order must be preserved. Your chaos ends today." The transmission cut out. "Arrogant bastard," General Webb muttered. Chen was staring at the tactical display, something nagging at her. "Run that transmission through linguistic analysis. I want to know everything we can about their culture, their psychology, anything that helps us understand them." The AI processed the speech in seconds. Analysis complete. The Vor prioritize order over creativity, collective unity over individual action, predetermined outcomes over improvisation. They view humanity as chaotic and therefore dangerous. "They're not wrong," the president said quietly. "Chaos is what we do best." Chen smiled grimly. "Then let's give them chaos they'll never forget." Major David Hawkins settled into the gel suspension chamber, feeling the oxygenated fluid rise around him. It was cold. The breathing reflex kicked in, and he inhaled liquid, every instinct screaming that he was drowning, dying, his lungs burning. Then the sensation passed. The gel was breathing for him. His heart rate slowed. "Vitals are stable." Dr. Patel's voice came through the neural link. "Major, you're doing great." "Liar," Hawkins subvocalized. "I feel like I'm in a lava lamp." "A very expensive lava lamp designed to keep you alive at 47 Gs. The Valkyrie's systems came online around him. The craft was a marvel. All angles and adaptive surfaces, more like a living thing than a machine. Kowalski had built something extraordinary. "Longshot, this is Control," Chen's voice. "You are go for launch. Mission clock starts in 60 seconds. "Copy that, Control." Hawkins ran through the pre-flight checklist one last time. Every system showed green. The quantum tap device was secured in the cargo bay, its exotic matter core humming with barely constrained energy. 30 seconds. Hawkins thought about his daughter, 8 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs, currently safe in a bunker in Colorado with her mother. If this worked, she'd never know how close she came to not having a tomorrow. 10 seconds, 9, 8. The high-altitude carrier plane released the Valkyrie at 80,000 feet. For one glorious second, Hawkins hung suspended between sky and space, between hope and annihilation. Then he lit the engines. The Valkyrie screamed toward Chicago at Mach 12. The Vor ship detected the Valkyrie immediately. Of course it did. The question wasn't whether they'd see him coming. It was whether they'd consider him a threat worth engaging. Hawkins watched his threat board light up. Energy weapons tracking, point defense systems activating, defensive fields strengthening. "They're treating you like a mosquito," Chen's voice came through. "That's good. Means they haven't figured out what you're carrying." "Yet," Hawkins muttered. The first plasma burst past 100 meters to starboard, a warning shot. The second came closer. The third would have vaporized the Valkyrie if Hawkins hadn't executed a barrel roll that pulled 16 Gs and made the gel suspension feel like it was trying to squeeze him into a singularity. "Status?" Chen demanded. "Living the dream, Control." Hawkins adjusted his approach vector, using the Vor ship's own weapon fire to mask his trajectory. The AI was feeding him micro-corrections, threading the needle through defensive fire that should have been impossible to survive. But humans had spent thousands of years getting very, very good at not dying when the universe wanted them dead. 50 meters, the AI announced. "Quantum tap deployment window opening in 3, 2, 1. Hawkins triggered the device. The Valkyrie's cargo bay opened, and Kowalski's impossible machine emerged. A sphere of exotic matter wrapped in magnetic fields, trailing quantum entanglement cables like luminous hair. It drifted toward the Vor ship's hull, seeking the reactor signature. Inside the alien vessel, alarms began to scream. "What is this?" the Vor commander's voice roared across all frequencies. "Impossible! You cannot!" The tap connected. For 3 eternal seconds, the quantum device drank power from a reactor that could fuel stars. It channeled that energy through dimensions that human mathematics could barely describe, opened a tunnel through space-time itself, and anchored the other end near the event horizon of a black hole that had been consuming worlds since before Earth had cooled from molten rock. The Vor ship began to move, not forward or backward, sideways, perpendicular to normal space. "No!" The alien commander's voice rose to a shriek. "We are eternal! We are order! You cannot!" The ship folded in on itself and vanished, with a sound like reality clearing its throat. One moment, 2 kilometers of alien warship hung over Chicago. The next, there was only empty sky and the smell of ozone.